The ladies are waiting for phone calls over here to my left. So till 6 p.m., they will be taking those donations that are so very important for Roger Maris Cancer Center and for Sanford Caring for Kids. So please make sure to do so. They're here till 6 p.m. and it goes on all day tomorrow. So it's a busy place. And also, I know Scott likes to hear this as well. When this show ends at 6:30, it is Inside Twins baseball. Will be a conversation for half an hour. And we're on the verge of baseball season, Scott.
We're on the verge. It's 4 weeks till pitchers and catchers report.
Somewhere in that ballpark. And yes, last night the Twins caravan rolled into Fargo,
great.
and
I've seen a number of them. They're great.
Yeah, they really were.
Came to Fargo.
It was I'm trying to think the two that came, Gordon and
Nick Gordon, Jose Miranda, and then their third base coach, and I'm blanking on his name, were there. But the two players that made it, our broadcasters were unfortunately not able to make it. Danny Gladden and Chris Atterbury had to stay back in the cities. So we had a couple players, and Jack Michaels ran the show. It was a blast. It was packed house, sold out.
It was sold out, and that's at the Sanctuary. They might need to go to the Fargo Dome maybe to have that next time, because the popularity of the Minnesota Twins grows ever so much. But this is Game on Hockey. It's a hockey show, not a baseball show. Every Thursday night, make this appointment radio from the Nilles Law Firm studio, and of course broadcasting on 790 KFJO and 104.7 FM. A big thank you as always, and we have a new sponsor. And I told Scott about this week, and he was very, very happy to hear. So, Scott, can you see the puck when you're up in the press box, high above the Discovery, or whatever the heck the name of that stupid rink in Winnipeg?
Canada Life Center.
I can never remember the Canada Life Center. I can see it from the Ralph Ingles Center.
And the Canada Life building is like the main building by the legend.
I haven't been there for 3 years. The weather's been COVID, and then the weather every time I try to get up there. But anyway, the Canada Life Center. Can you see the puck from up in the press box without glasses?
Quite clearly.
Quite clearly? Okay. Because we have picked up someone you might want to go see in case those eyes aren't working good. Bacon, Strin, and Vision is now also a sponsor. I call them the eye guys. If you want to get those eyes fixed, as Scott puts on, turquoise glasses this evening to read the screen, they're the guys to see. So we really do appreciate Bacon, Strin, and Vision jumping on board and sponsoring this hockey show. Nilles Law Firm, obviously, a sponsor. The Golf Center in Grand Forks, Ralph Engelstead Arena, the Sioux Shop in the Ralph Engelstead Arena, Dave Noah, Remax Legacy, Jarrell's Hockey World, and of course, our friends at Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. That's how we have a show each week, and we're very thankful, aren't we, Scott?
Absolutely. Without them, we would be talking to each other on the YouTubes, just the pair of us, zooming each other and going up on YouTube. But thank you to everybody who sponsors the show: Pilot Mound, Nilles, Jarrell's, Golf Center, and our brand new partners.
Bacon, Strin, and Vision. We do appreciate it a great deal. Well, it was an eventful weekend at the Ralph last weekend. We'll put that one in the history books as they move forward to the University of Miami at Ohio this weekend. We're getting down to only 2 home series left for the University of North Dakota Fighting Hawks. Some challenges still with this team, and sometimes you've seen it as well, Scott. The turnaround can be very, very quick. I'm not putting this season in the bank already and moving on to next year, but the Winnipeg Jets kind of had the same struggles last year, and that sure turned on a dime, didn't it? So kind of a comparison to be made.
Well, I don't want to do that because I quite like Brad Berry a lot.
Yeah, no, the coaching part of it.
The Winnipeg Jets turned on a dime because the coaching situation got fixed.
Okay.
And the players have bought into a system that they understand and they know they can win with. And they just finished a road trip where they went 2-3. The problem wasn't defense. The problem was the fact that their 3 losses, they only scored 1 goal in each game. In the games they won, they scored goals. They're doing the job defensively. They just go through. They did it last year. They've done it this year. They go through periods of time when they have no puck luck. And I think all teams run into that at some point in the season. But the Jets just do it in 2 and 3 game bursts where they'll go 3 games and not score at all with all that scoring power. Loads of guys who can score goals, and then they get nothing for 2 or 3 games. And it's the most frustrating thing to watch. If you're going to watch the Jets lose 7-6. Don't lose 2-1 or lose 3-1 and it becomes 4-1 with an empty netter. Those kind of things get really frustrating to watch. So the key to the Jets, I think, is play that defensive system. That's what turned your season around. But hopefully get the puck luck necessary to score 2, 3, 4 goals, because you can't expect Connor Hellebuck, as good as he is, to go the season giving up 0 and 1 every night. That's
Well,
not good.
I do know one thing. The University of North Dakota fan base is a little frustrated with not the goaltending at UND, but last weekend Drew DeRitter was very, very good. You show, you know what, two goals or three goals where they lost 2-1. Yeah. Anyway, didn't let in very many goals last weekend. I think it was 4 total, if I remember correctly. But they they ended up losing on Saturday evening. He played very, very well. So goaltending wasn't the issue, but the goal scoring has now become the issue with this hockey team, and the consistency or the lack thereof of scoring consistency. And I think the fan base, and I know I'm tired, every time an opposing team comes, their goaltenders look like they're all Americans. What is with that?
But we should have expected that based on both our guests last week. Bruce Siskey and Brad Schlossman both said the same thing.
Yeah.
That the issue in Duluth is not that they give up any goals, that they can't score any. So what they win? 2-1?
2-1.
They scored 2. You shouldn't win scoring 2 in NCAA Division I hockey, but they have goaltending and they have a solid defense, and they did their job and got a split.
Well, I have faith in this UND hockey team. Many people don't, but I do. They play University of Miami, Ohio tomorrow. The pregame show will hit the air tomorrow night on KFGO at 6 p.m. And so, because it's a different time zone against the University of Miami, Ohio, who's in last place in the league. If they can pull a sweep off this week, they do make a nudge up towards that home ice advantage. Pairwise points now are very difficult to get into the NCAA tournament guaranteed. They're going to have to do it by winning the league, I think, at this point. But home ice advantage, first round of the playoffs, is extremely important, isn't it, Scott?
Well, yeah, of course it is. And again, I'll go back to our friend Brad Schlossman, who I think really has a handle on the way this team plays. And I mean, he impressed me even more last night as a guest on this show. He really knows what he's talking about when it comes to this hockey team. And he said that the key to the season was going 9-3 down the stretch. One loss in there. The losses are the problem. You can't have more than 3. So they've only got 2 left to go. They've got to go into Oxford, Ohio this weekend and win a couple of games and be back to 3-1 on this trek for 9-3, because it's basically 3 segments of 3-1. So it's going to be important that they continue to play well defensively. Don't get all too tied up in goal scores. Goal scoring will come. It will happen. They just played against a team that is tremendous defensively. And play it and one shift at a time. That's all you can do now in the situation you're in. Right now, the way it according to Brad, and all based on what he said last week, I'll buy what he says. This team needs to be 8-2 down the stretch. So it's one shift at a time. That's the only way you can play that.
That's the way to do it. Absolutely. By the way, you're listening to Game on Hockey on the Mighty 790 KFGO. He's Scott Taylor. I'm Travis Dunn. Each and every Thursday night, and our guest this evening, we typically have a couple of guests, but this week we only have one. And I'll let Scott tell you why we have one. He's got some great stories to share, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, there may be listeners in your region that know him because he was the voice of the Jets for so long during the 80s and 90s. And then when the Jets were sold to Arizona, he went to Phoenix with the team and was the voice of the Coyotes. So he is, to me, the voice of hockey. Kurt Keelback, out of a little tiny town in Saskatchewan, all the way to the big lights of the National Hockey League. He's got a new book out. It's called 2 Minutes for Talking to Myself. It's available at Ferguson's Books in West Fargo. Of course, available all over Manitoba. But he has more stories than he's forgotten more stuff than I know. So it's going to be a great 20 minutes or so tonight with Kurt Keelback. And go out and get the book because it's a lot of fun. We've already had some Twitter notes today from people who went out this afternoon and got the book and already love it. So we'll give them a taste of what 2 minutes for talking to myself is about tonight.
Well, that seems like sometimes that's what we're doing as we do radio or play-by-play or whatever. We don't get a whole lot of feedback. We do our show on Zoom, by the way. So if you go to YouTube, search Game on Hockey, Travis Dunn and Scott Taylor, you'll see our beautiful smiling faces. Eric Johnson runs this show each and every week, and he does a great job of doing that. So we stay on this thing stays on the rails. But you talk about small town, and there's also a relationship between small town and the National Hockey League, and let's and not only in the broadcast booth, but in the playing world as well. An article that I forwarded to you today. But let's talk about the broadcast booth. You know, Alex Heinert does for Midco and now for CBS Sports Network, play-by-play with Dave Starman, and of course with the UND crew that covers UND hockey so extremely well. Small town South Dakota. He's now doing big-time hockey. Kurt Keelback, small town Saskatchewan to Brandon, to the Winnipeg Jets now and the Arizona Coyotes now. You know, how often does that happen, as well as in the playing world as well? But the small town seems to grow talent, doesn't it?
Well, I think so, but that piece you sent to me was very interesting. I don't think it had enough context to it.
It didn't. It was, yeah, very vague.
Tell you why. What constitutes development? Development till you're 10, development till you're 12, development till you're 14. Small towns, especially in places like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, North Dakota, Minnesota, gives you the opportunity to skate a lot. There's a lot of empty rinks, and it's really important. It's not important for you to get to know the rec director of the town. It's important for you to get to know the guy who drives a Zamboni and opens and closes the building. And if you know the guy who can let you onto the ice and skate more, you're going to get that opportunity. But this story was based on towns of 10,000 to 100,000, not big cities. But there was no context. I grew up in a town of 50, 60,000. I would have made this small town list.
Right.
I never made it to the NHL, of course, but a lot of guys I played with did, and a lot of guys still today are making it. Sarnia, Petrolia, Corunna. For those who don't know, the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, for instance, is from Corunna, Ontario. We never considered ourselves small town because we played Detroit, we played Toronto, we played Buffalo, we played big cities when we played games even back as far as novice. All our tournaments were against teams from Detroit, Chicago. It's not like it was, I don't think, in the 40s and 50s when you never got out of the small town and you were always playing there, and you would play Bantam, Junior, and Senior all for your hometown team. Now kids are coming out of these small towns and playing prep hockey. We've got Pilot Mound Hockey Academy. They're coming to bigger cities like Winnipeg to play at the rink. They're going to Calgary to play prep hockey. They're going to Vancouver to play prep hockey at 14 and 15. So yeah, you can say on your resume, I'm from Elkhorn, Saskatchewan, but from 14 to 17, I played at the rink in Winnipeg.
Or Shattuck St. Mary's or Notre Dame.
And that's another one of these situations. Because it's 10,000 to 100,000, I'm from Bloomington, Minnesota.
Right.
Well, that's the Twin Cities, right?
Right.
I'm from Lowell, Massachusetts. Well, that's Boston. I'm from Brampton, Ontario. Well, that's Toronto. So it's easy to say that the little community I'm from has 40,000 people, but the reality is I played in leagues from the time I was 12 until the time I was 20 in Toronto.
Right.
So yeah, I think there has to be more context. And the other thing is this: nobody's coming out of small towns like they used to. If you're a good player in Binscarth, Manitoba, they know about you at 12. And there are prep schools and colleges and junior hockey teams recruiting you consistently. And now we've got all this AAA hockey where kids are moving into the cities to play AAA. It's a different time. I would have appreciated this story in 1954.
Yeah, true.
I don't think it carries the same weight today.
Yeah, well stated. And, the article, by the way, it was the NHL. I saw the NHL headline on it. I don't know who exactly wrote this article, but talking about the small town development of hockey players and how there's more of them making their way to the National Hockey League. I guess when you put it in the context of northern Minnesota, Roseau, Warroad, Minnesota, David Christian, sure. Broughton brothers, Butsy Erickson out of Roseau, Dustin Buffalo, who played for the Winnipeg Jets from Roseau, Minnesota. And now at Fargo, what size of a town would Fargo be? Well, of course, Tyler Clevin is playing for UND. He's from Fargo, but he played for the U.S. development team.
Exactly. So I think it depends on the age. If you're talking about these players develop faster between the age of 6 when they first play organized hockey till the age of 12 before they go off to play for a development team or a prep school or move to Fargo to play big-time high school hockey. And we've heard a lot of those stories too, where kids are from smaller towns in North Dakota and Minnesota, and they go to Fargo or they go to Minneapolis to play their college hockey. I think that's a different commentary than what might have happened in the 1950s and 60s when you're from Shawinigan Falls, Quebec, and that's where you played right through junior. That's a whole different argument than, I'm from Edina.
Yeah, yeah. The Dinah is definitely Minneapolis and St. Paul. I will throw the Lamoureux twins from Grand Forks who went to Shattuck St. Mary's, and of course that's what they helped them develop, and they are what you would call from a small town. So an interesting article. It makes us have that conversation and play with a lot of guys from small towns, Saskatchewan, Bashaw, Alberta is where I think it's Bashaw is where Brad Berry's from, and he played at UND and professionally, and now coaching at UND, but. Yeah, his development was probably playing juniors somewhere like in Calgary or Edmonton or whatever. But regardless, that's a great conversation to have. What we should do, though, is Mr. Kurt Keelback will be joining us here shortly. Again, the former voice of the Winnipeg Jets and the Arizona Coyotes has written a book, 2 minutes for talking to myself, and and 5 out of 5 stars with some reviewers. So probably a book you might want to track down, and hopefully he'll be on here shortly to discuss that with Scott and myself on a beautiful Thursday evening before the storm blows in. And it sounds like it's going to be a nasty one for a while. But first of all, the Cares for Kids campaign, it goes on till 6 p.m. The phone block of ladies is taking some calls right now, so please feel free to do so. It's for an amazing cause, the Roger Maris Cancer Center. And of course, Sanford for Kids, the Kids Center there with the Culdies for Culdies Kids, all that. It's a great way to spend a few dollars to help support tremendous programs that they all have, and helping little ones get better. And I'm very fortunate. I've got a little one that got better, and very thankful for that. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Kurt Keelback. I hope I will carry on our conversation about the world of hockey as we do each and every week. This is Game on Hockey. It's Thursday night from the Nillis Law Firm studio. Hang around. Listen to Scott and myself. You'll have an enjoyable evening on a beautiful Thursday evening in Fargo, North Dakota on the mighty 790 KFGO.
You're clear, Scott.
Cool. Jets and Buffalo tonight.
just to make sure that you put this on your calendar and join us. By the way, we are at the Nilles Law Firm studio, which is established in the early 1900s. The Nilles Law Firm provides legal services in more than 10 areas of practice, including business and corporate law, estate planning, wills and trusts, probate, commercial litigation, adoption services, as well as real estate. A division of Nilles Law Firm is Northern Title, which provides complete closing and escrow services along with title insurance policies for all types of real estate transactions in North Dakota as well as Minnesota. Call Nilles Law Firm at 701-237-5544 or look them up on the World Wide Web at nilleslaw.com. So we appreciate their sponsorship. And so last week, Scott was in the Nilles Law Firm way south, Orlando, Florida. Now he's in the Nilles Law Firm studio way north in Winnipeg. The travels north were easy. How is airline travel these days, Scott?
It's not great, but Delta's pretty good. I mean, I had no complaints. We were late out of Minneapolis because the plane that was taking us to Winnipeg was coming in from Puerto Vallarta, and it was delayed, and so we were a little bit late. And that, I mean, that can be annoying, but it wasn't horrid. It wasn't an awful situation. And I've traveled Delta pretty. You went back when it was Northwest. Remember, it was Northwest Airlines.
Gosh, Northwest Orient.
Northwest Orient, yeah. And so I've traveled with them long enough that they treat me very, very well, and I have no complaints. But I think it's worth the money if you can do it, to go on the big heritage airlines and avoid the economy ones, simply because there's just been too many horror stories of too many things breaking down. And I have to admit that my Delta flight was pretty superb. Yeah.
Yep. So getting back to normal is probably the key part of that whole equation. But talking about getting back to normal,
Travis, the whole thing about COVID ripped the bandage off everything. Ripped the bandage off business. It ripped the bandage off government. And it's one of the reasons why everybody's angry all the time now. I mean, now it caused a mess, and we're having a heck of a time fixing the mess.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, there's a lot of mess out there these days. I was in a hospital yesterday, which what I do for a job. I'm a medical rep, and went to a counter to talk to a physician, and the lady said, "Be nice" on the sign by her desk. And I said, "Are people not nice?" Said, "Oh my gosh, people are just angry, and yes, they're having health issues perhaps, and so they want to be taken care of right away." But people just need to calm down, take a deep breath, and realize we're all in this ride together as we wait for Kurt Kuhlbeck to sign in here. Hopefully he'll get here shortly. Well, we can talk about the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota Wild have had some issues where they've shot themselves in the foot with some bad penalties. And Dean Evason, boy, he's putting his foot down. He's not putting up with it, is he?
No, he's benching guys. He's holding guys out of shifts. He's doing the things that a coach needs to do to get his message across. This was a team that was playing really, really, really well, I thought, for a stretch there. When they acquired Ryan Reeves, they went like 16-6 since he joined the team. And then things started to turn the other way, and there's been some issues. But again, I go back to the way the Jets lost 5 in a row and then won 8 of 9. I mean, the reality is you go through these periods during an 82-game hockey season, and right now the Wild are going through that period.
Yeah, and that's all teams go through those things. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Do you think with the trade deadline, what will the Minnesota Wild do, and what do you believe the Winnipeg Jets may do? The Pierre-Luc Dubois thing keeps popping up from time to time. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking the Jets are going to try to sign Dubois. I mean, they want to keep him. They would be crazy not to. They're going to try to do the best they can to hold on to him. Whether they're successful or not certainly remains to be seen, but I think that they're going to make an effort to do that. I think the Jets probably would like to make a trade for another top 4 defenseman if they could find one. But guess what? Everybody in the National Hockey League is looking for a top 4 defenseman. And would a top 4 defenseman come to Winnipeg before they would go to, say, New York or Tampa? I think that's probably unlikely. So it's going to be tough for the Jets to make any kind of deals that are going to make a big difference in how the team plays. The reality of Winnipeg is it's a team that has to be built through the draft. The biggest trade they made was Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois, which were basically the same draft pick guys. Basically they were the same guy. And so the reality is that's the only way the Jets make a big trade is if they deal a big guy. And I don't think they want to do that with this team. I don't think they want to break up the core right now. So if anything happens with the Jets, it's going to be an extra defenseman or a third line at best forward, that's the best that's going to happen to Winnipeg, simply because the reality of who the Jets are and where they are and the situation that they're in.
Well, and Matt Dumba was also taken out of the lineup, so that diminishes his trade value as well. So there's all sorts of things on the table. What will the teams do? They need to add something for that run, and both teams are having really good seasons. But St. Louis is finding their traction and so on. But with that, our guest is in queue. Kurt Kielbach, are you there? I can't see your face. Turn your camera on. I'd appreciate that. But welcome to Game On with Scott Taylor and Travis Dunn.
There's my pretty face.
There it is. Hey, Curdy, how are you?
Hey, I'm well, Scott. How you doing, Travis? Good to be here.
I'm doing great. Oh, great to have you. Go ahead, Scott. Fire away with some questions for our friend Kurt.
Well, let's start it out with, you're from tiny town Saskatchewan, and you made it all to the big time. Tell us the journey from Yorkton to the big time to the huge multi-million-dollar selling book that you have out right now.
The multi-million-dollar selling book?
Yes.
Okay, we're a little short on that, but I can tell you the rest of the story. Yeah, no, it was just it was something that happened. I was born the son of a broadcaster, and I always wanted to pursue what my dad did. And we went to Saskatchewan, and I was able to land a job with a local radio station, the one he worked for. And in fact, I started when I was 13 years old, and then continued on. And then one day I got a phone call out of the blue from Friar Nicholson, because Friar had been talking to Cactus Jack Wells, and he was looking for someone to come and take a position working with him doing the Winnipeg Jet games. And suddenly the phone rang, and there I was. I had the opportunity to broadcast NHL hockey. It's something I'd always dreamed of, but it's like any other dream, Scott. I mean, you may have dreamed of being a columnist one day and didn't know for sure that you would achieve it. Well, I certainly didn't think I was going to get that far. I mean, I grew up watching Danny Gallivan and listening to my dad and thinking, wow, what a great position that would be. Sit in a hockey arena and call a hockey game. I've always enjoyed a hockey game more when I'm broadcasting it than when I'm sitting. I'm a terrible fan. I don't know how to cheer. I think all the time in a press box, you're told not to cheer. And so you sit there, and I'm very stoic as a fan. I'm a boring fan. Even at Bomber games, I can't cheer. But I get right into it when I'm broadcasting a game and thoroughly enjoyed it. So it was a thrill. It was an opportunity, and certainly not something I ever realized, a dream I didn't realize I was going to be able to achieve.
Were you surprised to get the call to go to Phoenix?
I didn't get a call to go to Phoenix. I wrote the story in the book of what happened there. I was left in Winnipeg on my own, and I really was unemployed. I was 47 years old, and I thought, what the heck am I going to do? I don't want to be a regular reporter. I didn't want to do sports. I didn't want to do news. I wanted to do hockey. That's got into my blood. I'd done it for 17 years with the Jets. So I got the idea, I'm going to get down to Phoenix, and I'm going to see what I can do. So I did. I got on an airplane down to Phoenix almost the next day. And I've never, ever concentrated so much as I did on the flight from here to Minneapolis and from Minneapolis to Phoenix. And the whole time I visualized the interview process. And I thought of answers to every conceivable question I could be asked. So the next morning I get to Phoenix, I go down to the downtown office of the Coyotes, and I see the receptionist there, and I say, is the president here? And she said, yes, have you got an appointment? And I didn't bother answering. I barged by her, burst into his office. Sean Hunter was sitting at his desk. He said, who the hell are you? And I said, there's only one person for the job of voice of the Phoenix Coyotes, and you're looking at him. And then he asked me a few questions. And every question he asked me was one I'd rehearsed the answer to on the airplane. So it was perfect. So now he's heading down the stairs. He's going to his car because he's got to catch a flight back to his hometown of Denver. And all the way down the elevator right to his car, I was in his ear. I was selling myself. As he drove off, I was still talking. A week later, I got the call. I guess he admired my persistence, and I got the job.
Wow. Well, that's a lesson in persistence. That's a lesson for all of us. By the way, you're listening to Game on Hockey on the mighty 790 KFGO. Which is very similar to what CJOB in Winnipeg is. I grew up in Winnipeg listening to CJOB radio. We're covering with Friar Nicholson, who was covered the Winnipeg Jets for so very, very long. And of course, the voice you're hearing right now is Kurt Kielbach. The importance of that hometown radio, that importance of the radio coverage of hockey. It wasn't on TV very much, so radio is where we heard it. So that's why your voice is so very well known to so many people.
Well, it is. And, back from those days, there was always one voice that you associated with a particular hockey team. And so I was a beneficiary of that. I became more popular than I had a right to. And if you look around the NHL, and you'll find that people like, Bob Miller in Los Angeles, Rick Jenneret in Buffalo, or in those days, there was Jim Robson in Vancouver, Rod Phillips in Edmonton, and Peter Maher in Calgary. We all became the voice of the team, and we all became the people that kids would go to sleep with, and they're listening on the radio after bedtime. And so it created a bond. And so, it was just part of it. But now it's not the same, because there are so many games televised and all different broadcasters from every team and every game. So I don't think the singular identity is there anymore, and that's been lost. And but that certainly was a benefit to people like myself.
You mentioned Danny Gallivant. There was a time, and we're pretty much the same age, but there was a time when it was Bill Hewitt and Danny Gallivant. Those were the voices you heard across Canada, coast to coast. We got to see a lot of hockey in terms of comparison to the United States, but we heard two voices. How much of an influence were those two people on you?
Danny Gallivant in particular was a tremendous influence on me. I still think he's the best I've heard. I've not heard anybody recently or who's come along who I think is better. And of course, everything gets built up in your mind over the course of time. People always say that things were so much better in the old days, and the only thing was better in the old days is that you were young. So, but no, he was a tremendous influence on me, and my dad was too. They both had very good vocabularies. They both had an exciting style. And I decided that if I was going to broadcast hockey, I wanted to sound like I was enjoying the game. I didn't want to sound like I was giving a science class. And just be going along, and I mean, you do hockey a little bit differently than you do baseball, by example, and you'd know that, Scott. I mean, it's a slower moving game, but as far as the hockey is concerned, you're in the moment, every moment, and I think that's very important. So I try to convey a sense of urgency on every play.
Yeah, I felt the same way. The difference between hockey and baseball is baseball, you have to let the game breathe. You take your microphone and you stick it out into the crowd, and you just hear the crowd on a summer evening. Hockey, you have to be on top of it constantly, and less so, I think, with the National Hockey League, as opposed to when you were probably doing junior games in Saskatchewan, because there were no breaks, and it was go, go, go all the time.
And I tell you what, we're gonna do this. So we're gonna take a break right now because we've got some bills to pay, gentlemen. So we'll come back with the great Kurt Keelback. Sorry for butchering your name. I've known it since I was a little teeny kid. The author of 2 Minutes for Talking to Myself. We'll be talking about that book as well. But this is the Nilles Law Firm studio. Game on Hockey with Scott Taylor and Travis Dunn. By the way, a little UND hockey business to do. St. Cloud State on the 17th the 17th of February is the next game. That's hard to believe. But they take on St. Cloud State. Tickets available both nights at Ticketmaster.com or the RAA box office, starting at just $39. And of course, the Sioux Shop, you can pick up your Matt Green t-shirts available in the Sioux Shop or SiouxShop.com. One last shift with Matt Green, which was last week. Hoodies, UND colleges and department clothing, plus UND football, basketball, volleyball, soccer, t-shirts, and more at RAA.com or at the Ralph Engelstad Arena. We'll take a break when we come back. You're listening to Game on Hockey on the mighty 790 KFGO.
You like snow. We're seeing it certainly in Winnipeg. I understand, Travis, you're seeing it in Fargo.
Oh, yeah.
Which means it's the middle of the hockey season. And that means Jarrell's Hockey World is the place for everything you need when it comes to the greatest game on ice. Jarrell's has knit beanies, mini sticks, the best hockey sticks in the game, all of the best protective equipment bags, even nets for road hockey or the backyard rink. And Jarrell's has Bauer and CCM clothing, skate guards, laces, tape, wax, pucks, even the one thing that Travis and I need most, stick handling balls. In business for 50 years and the 2021 U.S. Bauer Retailer of the Year right here in our backyard. It's Jarrell's Hockey World, 1004 South Washington Street in Grand Forks. Call 701-775-0553 and add us at Jarrell's Hockey.
And tell them that Scott and Travis told you to go and look at stuff. One thing we do know with supply chain issues, there a lot of times a lot of stuff's not available. Jarrell's has a lot available. So if you're looking for that gap in your game, please make sure to stop by Jarrell's in Grand Forks. I've been there many, many times. And I imagine Kurt Keelback probably has as well. Grand Forks, not too far away from the great city of Winnipeg, and a little shopping action. Have you ever been to the Ralph Engelstad Arena? Dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway.
Yes, I have. And it's a beautiful facility. In fact, I was in Grand Forks just 2 weeks ago. I was down doing a signing for my book at the Ferguson bookstore down there with Patty. And yeah, so it was good, well received, and always enjoyed going to Grand Forks. We had a hockey tournament down there. I was watching my 8-year-old grandson perform, so that's always fun.
You know, and Grand Forks as close proximity. Do you find that Winnipeg Jets fans I find from Fargo North is kind of Winnipeg Jets territory, and Fargo Southeast is kind of Minnesota Wild territory?
Yeah, I suppose you're right. You know, I remember talking to somebody. I belong to a golf club here, and we play a men's night every Tuesday. And he was telling me, thanks a lot for making things so much easier for me. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I used to go to the UND, but I lived in Winnipeg. And the lady I'm now married to lived in Winnipeg. So every Friday night I would drive from Grand Forks to Winnipeg, and I would time it so I could listen to the Jet game all the way there. And if I was really lucky, there was another Jet game on Sunday night when I went back home. He said, you kept me from getting into an accident. I was so played out by the time I went back home. If I had a game to listen to, you kept me alive. So I felt good about that.
I'm very proud of the fact that the last game you broadcast and probably the next game you broadcast will be with me.
Yes.
Our last game was a Manitoba Junior Hockey League playoff game.
Yeah, we did. What was it? A couple of years we did the Manitoba Junior Hockey League on NCI, and it was enjoyable. It was a good process, and really the caliber of hockey was outstanding too. I always remember being impressed by the goaltending in particular in those days, but it was a lot of fun, and we were well received for the most part, and had the opportunity to do games all over Manitoba. So that was fun.
Who's your favorite player of all time that you broadcast?
My favorite player that I ever broadcast?
Yeah.
The most exciting was the year Teemu Selanne scored 76 goals. No question about it. I can recall, and I wasn't alone, that every time he came on the ice, you expected him to get a breakaway. You expected him to score a goal. In fact, it got to the point where I'd be looking down to the bench to see if he was standing up, getting ready to come back on the ice. It was excitement from the beginning right to the end. And of course, getting 76. And when I say right to the end, he was looking for 77th to defeat Alexander McGillney, who also had 76 that year. So it got right down to the wire, and it was thrilling all the way through.
The 1980s were a really, really interesting time for Winnipeg hockey. And I know you write about it in the book, but the Dale Hawerchuk era was really interesting simply because Hawerchuk was stuck as the second best player in the West.
Yeah.
Because that guy out in Alberta was the best. Happy birthday, by the way, Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, he was. And, when I say the most exciting year, watching one in particular individual was Teemu Selanne. And then I think back to, you go back to the 1980-81 season. I mean, that's over 40 years ago. But Dale Hawerchuk, when he was 18 years old, got over 100 points. And I do remember there was a game in Nanaimo, BC, right on the exhibition slate. It might have been his first game he played, and he just took over the game. And you began to realize then that this guy was the real McCoy. You always wonder when a guy's a first draft pick. There have been so many over the years who have been highly touted have come into the league. Some of them have done it, Mario Lemieux and of course Eric Lindros. But then you've got guys like Alexander Daigle and Doug Wickenheiser and people like this who didn't quite live up to the hype that, although I think we've got one coming on now that's going to get more hype than any of them, and he may be the best of the bunch. Well, maybe not as good as Mario, but this Connor Bedard, he's going to be something to watch.
Well, what do you think of Connor McDavid?
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, I know. And but there's another example. So it's but what I'm getting back to was Dale Hawerchuk in that first year. He just turned so many heads and made everybody realize that he was everything that John Ferguson and a whole lot of other people told us he would be. And it's always a little bit scary when you build up somebody at that age.
The voice you're hearing is Kurt Keelback, who covered the Winnipeg Jets as a play-by-play voice on CJOB, the Mighty 680 up in Winnipeg. And I call this the Mighty 790. KFGO in Fargo, you're listening to Game on Hockey on this wonderful Thursday night with Scott Taylor and Travis Dunn. You know, you talk about the game and the change of the game. Well, a player that you called games for, his name was Troy Murray, former UND hockey player. Everything goes back to UND at some point, Kurt. We always make sure to make that point. 99 points one year and wins the Selke as the best defensive player in the National Hockey League. The league has changed just a little bit offensively, hasn't it?
Well, it has. And, you know, you mentioned Connor McDavid. There's an example of why, but the game goes through different phases. Back when Wayne Gretzky was with the Edmonton Oilers, they were scoring 5.5 goals a game as a team. Sometime later, when the Devils were on top of things, they were scoring barely over 5 a game on average. So, and that was for both teams together. So it changes all the time. But yeah, thinking back to Troy Murray, he was the captain of the Winnipeg Jets. And I know that the coaches loved him because he was the kind of guy that he did a lot of the coach's job for them. If somebody deserved to be called down, Troy Murray didn't hesitate to do it. He was a disciplinarian as a captain, and he was also a rah-rah guy. He knew who to pat on the back, he knew who to kick in the butt, and he took that responsibility upon himself, and the coaches loved him for it.
Back in the day when we traveled with the Jets back in the 80s and 90s, it was a different world then too. It's not the chartered planes, the chartered jets they run today. We flew economy. We got on everybody else's Air Canada or Delta flight and flew economy and hung around airports and did our interviews in airports. Of all the guys you dealt with, who's the best guy to talk to? Who's the best interview you did?
You know, one of the best interviews was Brian Hayward.
Yep.
When he played goal with the Winnipeg Jets. I always liked interviewing guys like, well, Robert Picard, of course. He loved microphones and he was available anytime. Morris Lukowich, you never quite knew what Morris Lukowich might say because he was more honest than in most. And of course, Paul McLean was always pretty close to being my favorite. And you could talk to him and Laurie Boschman and Dave Ellett. There were so many others. There were a lot of people who were good to talk to, but and Eddie Olczyk. I mean, Eddie Olczyk looked for the microphone and he's still speaking into them now. So there have been a lot of good players in that regard. I mean, you know what it's like, Scott. Some guys won't talk to you regardless. They just don't. Well, they will talk to you, but they do it very hesitantly and they don't want to. They say, can you talk to somebody else? But you explain to them that's part of their job, really. And it is. Part of their job is to sell hockey, just like it was for us. And I used to tell them that. And I remember having that conversation with Thomas Steen. He was pretty shy. And he wound up being maybe my favorite because he was just a great, great person. But he was shy and his face would all turn red as soon as you said hello to him. So he put a microphone in his face. He like, don't like to talk. Yeah. Eventually he became a counselor in Winnipeg, which really boggled my mind because he seemed so shy. And I think he still is shy to this day, but he was always a good guy.
Well, the book is 2 minutes for talking to myself. The guest is Kurt Keelback, the play-by-play voice of the Winnipeg Jets and the Phoenix Coyotes of the National Hockey League, also the Manitoba Junior Hockey League as well. So we do appreciate you joining Scott and myself on a beautiful Thursday night. Again, I grew up listening to that voice. It's wonderful hearing you, wonderful talking to, and I hope we can do this again sometime soon. But are there any book signings in the Fargo area or Grand Forks in the near future?
No, like I say, I did one in Grand Forks a couple of weekends ago. And I do know that my book is at Ferguson's in West Fargo, if I can get that plug out there. And yeah, you can say hello to Dane Ferguson while you're there. I talked to him a couple of times. And no, so there's no signings immediately in that part of the country, but who knows what lies ahead. selling a book or promoting a book is a long-term process. I'm sure Scott Taylor can tell you that. Mind you, he's written more books than John Grisham. I'm only on my first.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a big hit. It's got 5 out of 5 stars with some reviews. So if you're a hockey fan, hockey stories is what you're into. It's like a radio show. You tune in each week. You can pick up the book, get more great hockey stories from the great Kurt Keelback, former voice of the Winnipeg Jets and the Phoenix Coyotes. Thank you so very much for joining Scott and me on this beautiful Thursday night.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it, and be back anytime.
You got it.
Thanks,
Kurt Keelback. Thank you very much. We sure appreciate that. Well, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk to a former goalie for the Winnipeg Jets, WHA days. Gordy Tummelson will be joining us. You are indeed listening to the Mighty 790 KFJO. It's Game on Hockey from the Nilles Law Firm studios on a beautiful Thursday night. We do this each and every Thursday night, by the way. For Scott, I'm Travis, and that's Eric back over there. We'll take a break. We'll be back with Gordy Tummelson, Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy conversation after this message.
Holy, he was pretty good. Grade 8.
Wow, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
I could hit profession forget.
And welcome back. The Game on Hockey on Thursday evening. Appreciate you listening in each and every week. We appreciate Kurt Keelback joining us. And boy, I tell you what, the voice of the Winnipeg Jets for a very long time now. The book, look it up. It's 2 minutes for talking to myself. And that's what we feel like we're doing sometimes. And Scott, you can talk to yourself about, well, let's see, the Golf Center in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Oh man, am I ever ready to play golf as I look outside?
Oh, yeah.
Snow coming down, but everybody's brought their golf game indoors for the winter. And remember that the Golf Center has a complete line of golf simulators, hitting mats, nets, and training aids in stock to help make you a better player in this off season. Garmin R10, Bushnell, Launch Pro, and SkyTrack will help keep your sweet swing in its groove all winter long. The Golf Center also has a full inventory of bags, FootJoy golf shoes, the best golf balls on the market, and clothes to make you look great in the course. Give Brian and the guys a call or stop by the Golf Center at 3001. That's 3001 South Columbia Road in Grand Forks. Call them at 701-775-0019. I don't know why I give out the address all the time, because everybody knows where it is.
Yep, right? Absolutely. Yep.
I don't know anybody who doesn't know where it is. I don't know anybody in Winnipeg who's a golfer doesn't know where it is.
I know. And make sure to stay tuned at 6:30 for Inside Twins as the twin baseball season. Well, it's not that far away. And yeah,
Weeks,
we'll be seeing a lot of green grass. And with that, we
4
open the
weeks,
gate.
baby.
Yeah, exactly. I know the guy's excited about baseball, but we got a goaltender that's very excited about his Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, and that's Gordy Tummelson. Welcome to the back to the show, Gordy.
Thanks, Travis. Appreciate you guys having me every week. It's lots of fun.
Oh, lots of fun and lots going on in Pilot Mountain. Give us a lowdown on where everyone's off to this week and the excitement of coming down to North Dakota and playing some games.
Yeah, we've got some games this weekend where girls are in Pilot Mountain and Manitou, Manitoba. The U17s are in Cairnsport, just outside of Regina, Saskatchewan. Our U18 guys are at home with a couple games against Notre Dame and the famous Hounds, and our U15s are in Winnipeg against the Rink Academy. So lots of fun there. Last weekend we talked about a big game against the Minot Wolverines. Our U15s played them, and we came out on top of a 6-2 Buffalo's victory. But it was a great game. I mean, it was close until toward the end. High pace, a lot of good skills. I was really impressed with both teams going at each other the way they did. So lots of fun there.
And you were doing a little recruiting, I understand, perhaps, maybe talking to some people, kind of the thing.
Yeah. Well, kind of. I wasn't, but our head coach from our girls team noticed that the really good young goalie for the Wolverines is a girl, and grade 8, grade 9 girl, and we're not recruiting them away from somebody. We're telling them about a little bit different experience. That if they choose to do something different, that we might be, and we're close by. That's why we're doing this radio show. We're close by to Fargo, Grand Forks, Minot, Langdon, all those kinds of towns. So yeah, so it's it's a few hours drive for the parents if they wanted to ship their kids off to Canada for a 10-month school year, and they get a tremendously different hockey experience than they would enjoy back in either AA or AAA program back at home.
Yeah, you talk about that, Gordy. Expand on that if you would. You're not trying to take them away from a program like a high school program or whatever, but if you're going to be the fourth goaltender, you're looking for an opportunity. Hockey is your passion, but you're looking to develop your game. That's why you would choose Pilot Mountain. Great opportunity, small town living, great education, and great basics taught to you at the Hockey Academy itself, correct?
Yeah, 6 days a week, maybe 7, depending on, and you got lots of extra ice time. We're just opening up the $4 million brand new dormitory for the kids to live in. It's going to be it's magnificent. It's the absolute jewel of the CSSHL. We're really proud of this, and so anybody wanting to take advantage of new building smell, this is the place to go. And yeah, it's a different experience. It's hockey and education, community, all munched in. The other programs, we don't knock them. It's 2 days a week here and there. We're 6 days a week, and we're traveling and school, and it's just it's a really neat, different experience.
When you say the CSCH, explain that. Canadian Sports High School Hockey League, is that basically what it's come down to?
That's pretty close. You got it pretty close. I won't muddle it up any more than you did, Travis. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's a big league. It's all through Western Canada. It started there, and then now it's in the east. It goes right to the East Coast. We've got teams in the Maritimes, Quebec, and in Ontario. So that particularly, it's a first-class league. Education first. Then the hockey comes in, and then there's lots of hockey. And everybody in the hockey program has got to be a certified coach with years of experience. And I can go on, but it's a great program.
I look at your schedule, and I think to myself, Pilot Mound will teach you how to be a National Hockey League player in some of the best rinks in Western Canada, because you play so many games against so many good teams. You by osmosis will get better at Pilot Mountain.
Just by playing the other teams, you go, holy cow, these guys are good. I mean, we play Nax, Northern Alberta Extreme, and Edge and whatnot. These teams have been around forever, and they're fantastic. I mean, they've got the WHL draft kids that we're trying to lure away too. But I will say this: I had a goalkeeper for 3 years here, Jordan McGinnis, who's now in Cochrane in the junior program in Alberta. And his dad just commented to me, you know what you taught my kid? time management. He
There you
goes to
go.
university, has a job, plays junior hockey, and he never misses a beat. His dad says it was wonderful that we could kind of figure out how to do all the things that he did in Pilot Mound I
gotta go. Gordy, you
doing the
tell them
thing.
all, hey, this has been a Thursday night. Listen each week from the Nilles Law Firm studio. For Scott, for Eric, for Travis, for Gordy, have a wonderful night.
Thanks, you guys.